Let's nip this in the bud before it becomes a thing. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is about to become a liberal hero in this election that will not end because for once he's doing his job and we need to make sure that this does not go unchallenged. See, what had happened was Georgia has been called for Biden, but because the margin of victory between the winner and the loser in the state is not more than 1%. Actually, it was like 0.5%. Georgia election law allows for a recount to be requested by any candidate within 2 business days of the election result being certified. Now, the law does not require an automatic recount of votes, however, and what Raffensperger did when he declared that a statewide hand recount of every ballot cast in the presidential election seems to not have been straightforward and strictly reflective of election law either. Now, it's all very confusing and it's a big old legal mess, but what is clear is that Raffensperger seems to have combined the state's audit and recount rules and created a time-consuming and honestly drama-inducing process that puts all eyes on Georgia for the duration of this hand recount of every ballot cast in the state. Now, the way an audit was supposed to work in Georgia was that a random sample of ballots was supposed to be pulled, and the ballots were supposed to be reviewed of those samples. A recount was supposed to only be done by scanning machines, not hand recounts, according to an election board rule that was passed earlier this year. And there are even questions as to whether Raffensperger is legally supposed to be able to do what he's doing, combining the manual audit procedure with a full recount. But the sample size of an audit would have been 1.5 million ballots. So maybe it would have just ultimately been easier to go on and recount every ballot while auditing them to check them for accuracy at the same time. So do you see how confusing and onerous this is? And all of it has to be completed by November 20th. Now, I honestly cannot speak to the legalities of this because despite what some people think, I'm not a lawyer. I just like words. But I can confidently say that election workers who are doing this job in Georgia, they deserve all kinds of accolades. But the only person getting attention in this is Brad Raffensperger, who is now in the media crying about members of his party pressuring him to throw out ballots. See, Raffensperger is a Republican. And he said on Monday that Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina has questions about the validity of legally cast absentee ballots in the state, which sure makes Graham out to be an election bully in my eyes. And it absolutely calls into question, what is the senator from South Carolina doing meddling in the state tally of ballots in Georgia? Yeah, that's shady. Raffensperger went on to say, other than getting you angry, it's also very disillusioning. He was talking about, obviously, the comments from Republicans, but he was also talking about getting death threats from Trump supporters. And he said, particularly when this kind of behavior comes from people on my side of the aisle, everyone that's working on this needs to elevate their speech. We need to be thoughtful and careful about what we say. And that's nice and all. And he's right. But don't go down this road of feeling sorry for poor old embattled Brad vote purging Raffensperger because he wasn't too disillusioned not to purge over 300,000 Georgians from voter registration rolls last year, simply because most hadn't voted in any election in the previous 7 years. I didn't know that voting rights were use it or lose it, but that's what they say in Georgia. And this was after Brian Kemp had already purged 1.4 million voters from voter registration rolls in his 8-year tenure as Secretary of State. That's how he won the governor's race against Stacey Abrams, won in quotation marks. So we're supposed to rally behind the embattled Raffensperger, who is under assault from his own party because he's finally doing the right thing now? I don't know. I don't think those nearly 2 million Georgians who had their right to vote taken from them see him as a hero at all, even if he is absolutely right this one time. Now, this mismatched hand audit process has turned up 2,600 ballots in one county, Floyd County that were apparently not included in the initial vote tallies because someone didn't upload them into the magic tally machine off of a memory stick. Now, of course, Trump and his sycophants are screaming that this is the proof that the election was rigged. But here's the kicker. Of the 2,600 ballots mistakenly missed in the initial vote tally, only 800 of those were for Trump. That means the rest, 1,600, were for Biden. And this is just not a win for Trump. Even though he and his supporters are claiming that it is, it's just the tip of the iceberg of the conspiracy meant to deny Trump of the second term he deserves. But it's really not, because other counties have already reported that their hand recounts are matching the machine tallies. You know, the Dominion machines that are allegedly tied to a Venezuelan plot to oust Trump. I'm not kidding. That's the conspiracy. So this 800 vote bump for Trump doesn't come anywhere close to overcoming Biden's 14,000 vote lead in the state of Georgia. Now, the recount continues, but horrifyingly enough, even when the recount concludes, the margin of victory could still be close enough to allow Trump to demand another recount. I would love for this to be over, but I'm afraid it isn't yet, folks. And I'm afraid it isn't by a long shot. I hope I'm wrong. Follow Luke Mon Nation on patreon.com/LukeMonNation for lots of great content.